Good morning, folks, and welcome to 9200 West Fullerton Avenue in Franklin Park, former home of Joslyn Manufacturing Company. Joslyn operated a site here for 90 or 100 years. Stopped operations in the early 2000s, and the site was razed a couple years ago. What we're left with is a 33-acre environmental mess that's been mostly cleaned, but perhaps will never be or cannot be fully cleaned. So we're here this morning to talk about that history and, of course, cook. Done a little bit of research and answered some questions that I've always had. I'm going to share that information with you now. When we come back, got to get this coffee underway. When I graduated college in 2000, I took a job with the telephone company. The phone company uses lightning arresters, basically a fuse, to protect its internal equipment in the rare occasion that lightning strikes a telephone line outside. That fuse is a small red or black chunk of plastic marked Joslyn. I remember seeing this back then and saying, wait a minute, I know that name. I grew up on the west side of River Grove in the 1980s. Like any well-adjusted preteen boy, we wanted to break and vandalize things. And like kids of that age, for time immemorial, if you were especially lucky, you had some kind of abandoned structure to prowl around in. At the dead end, which is Fullerton Avenue, and just across the border into Franklin Park, there was a business with a large sign that said Joslyn. But it was behind that building where the fun happened. For years, I figured that this playground of danger was just an adjacent piece of earth and had nothing to do with the Joslyn Corporation. But as I researched for this video, I finally proved I was wrong. Marcellus Joslyn was born in 1873 in Woodstock, just about 50 miles north of Chicago. In 1910, the Harvard graduate formed Joslyn Manufacturing to produce equipment for the telephone industry at large. And apparently, they were still doing so about 100 years later when I worked in that industry. But what in tarnation necessitated the vacant land behind their little factory in my hometown? In 1927, Joslyn first got a hold of this property. But they weren't making lightning arresters, they had a wood treating operation. I'm not clear what they were treating, but the top two products treated with creosote to preserve wood are telephone poles and railroad ties. We already know about their business in the telephone industry, and there's a rail yard next door. They continued this operation through the early 70s. If you need to know anything about creosote, just know that in a Google query for that word, the first result is a page on the website for the Environmental Protection Agency. After Joslyn stopped their wood treating operation on the site, they moved back into their famous lightning arresters. In 2008, they shut the place down, and it remained shuttered until about 2020 when the entire site was razed. As far back as the late 1980s, Joslyn attempted to clean up the site on their own accord, and they hauled off 50 million pounds of soil to a hazmat landfill in Oklahoma. But in May 2014, the village of Franklin Park sued Joslyn and its many, many corporate entities for injunctive relief regarding the abatement of the contamination to soil and groundwater of the area. In 2016, it appears the parties came to an out-of-court settlement, the terms of which I believe are private because I cannot find any figures besides the village's request that Joslyn also cover about $250,000 in attorney's fees. Today, all the structures are gone. All that is left is a 33-acre property. The 4 real estate pins are split by railroad tracks added in the 2000s by the village of Franklin Park as part of their removal of 2 grade crossings on nearby Grand Avenue. The 4 properties, even today, still show Joslyn Manufacturing as the owner. But history is boring. What is not boring is having a wasteland, or wonderland, as a local kid where rules don't apply and the taste of danger is so delightful and thick in the air. Or maybe that was just the naphthalene and arsenic. I'm lucky to have taken a few pictures in the early 2000s before the buildings were torn down, but if you want the real deal, I have to invoke my old friend Jamie, who grew up about 200 feet from the property's western edge.
So I grew up across the street from the empty Joslyn property, and I vividly remember walking up onto the train tracks, and there was just a giant hole in the fence. At some point, there were some concrete structures on the north side of the property. I don't know if there was a concrete company at some point that stored pre-made I-beams and crossing the fence area and the nerves, I could still feel that feeling today. Looking back, going in there, it kind of planted that seed and gave me that little adrenaline rush and all those endorphins. And I don't think people today, kids, I don't think they experience that as much.
What we have going today is something that goes by many, many names. The most common, it seems, is Swedish egg coffee. And everybody knows that eggs are just a wonderful ingredient in coffee. So what we've got here is 3 tablespoons of ground coffee that I ground myself last night. And then we get into the real fun, which of course is the egg that I somehow carefully brought here without destroying. There we go. This is not something that they give a rat's ass about in Sweden, apparently. But Swedish immigrants, it looks like perhaps specifically to Minnesota, they had low-grade coffee and or low-grade water. And the albumin in the egg whites act as a natural clarifying agent, and it's somehow supposed to draw bitterness out of the coffee as well. How true is that? We're about to find out. This looks exactly like brownie mix. Don't think you want to lick the spoon on that one though. All right, we've got boilage. So I'm not totally clear how I'm gonna get all this goop out into the water, but that's what we're supposed to do. And we're gonna actually boil this like at a raging boil, which everything I know about coffee says you're not supposed to do that. And off we go. Give that about 3.5 minutes. All right, I'm calling it. And this has formed a magnificent raft, and everything is floating. It looks like a beaver dam is floating on top. So we're supposed to give that a couple minutes, and then we're going to add some cold water, and that should make it sink to the bottom. And in the meantime, we need to keep this fire going so we can have something to cook breakfast over momentarily. All right, see, our beaver dam has definitely started to sink. Let's give it some cold water. Hard to see through that steam for either of us, but I think this might be pourable. Let's give it a go. I had read that it would have like a really pale color, and it definitely does. It's fairly translucent. I don't know what to make of this. Yeah, it's pouring off properly. I think I'm only gonna get 1 cup out of this though, is the sad part. Maybe 1.5. Okay, I got a perfectly clear cup of coffee. What's left in the bottom there is absolutely from a horror movie. It's a coffee omelet, but it looks like a beaver dam or sewage. This is a perfect cup of coffee. I am blown away right now. I consider the fact that I come all the way out here and have a disaster and just have to not shoot it or throw the footage away. That's a that's a totally different experience. This is the coffee I drink every day. That's not what it tastes like. That is absolutely wonderful. That was worth a lot of work to get here and make a fire and all this kind of stuff. Wow. I would do this again. I'm doing this again. Make yourself some Swedish egg coffee. It's not a gimmick. What better accompaniment to the Swedish egg coffee than the egg sandwich? So you know what kind of mayo's in here, and it ain't from America. The QP baby. So I got the Texas toast. We're gonna mayonnaise it up and toast it in the pan. Fry up our egg and get it done. We're also, I should add, going to fry our egg in mayonnaise. And yes, people, this is a thing. And no, people, I have never attempted it before. But we'll see how that goes. All right, let's have a peek at Texas toast number 1. Oh, look at that. Looks like French toast. That'll do just fine. Listen to that sizzle. Oh, wait a minute. Let me turn the burner to low. Never mind, there is no burner. And if I don't keep the burner on high, I'll have no burner at all. Oh yeah, good enough for me. I read everywhere that the mayonnaise will burn if you're not careful. Yeah, I mean, the mayonnaise is browning right away, but not burning. I just hope that it gives me enough release to flip this thing. We got a little slipperiness. This might actually work. I don't know if it's quite there yet. All right, we got slipperiness. I'm gonna go for it. I think the bottom's cooked. I hope that was on camera. We're definitely gonna bring some new flavors to the party with this mayonnaise, but as a cooking agent, it's working really well. And yes, it will burn, and yes, it does brown, but this is, as of right now, browning in like the nice way. And this fire, ow, made it. We made it. Oh yeah. And because you always got to gild the lily, or at least I do. Got to get yourself a $25 bottle of Australian ketchup. I bought this for the brunch with Doc Tyden video, and I ended up never using the footage because I just determined that it didn't work with everything. And I had to research to find a legitimate Australian ketchup brand, or as they like to call it in Australia, sauce. Not tomato sauce, sauce. That's as good of a fancy egg sandwich as I've ever made. I definitely should have toasted both sides. Texas toast is so squishy that it has like no stability, and toasting both sides would help with that. So it's like I'm squeezing marshmallows right now. I've made thousands of egg sandwiches in my life. That is one of the best. I can't get over it. What a day. But that's all for now, folks. Thanks for coming along on a trip to cook up some breakfast in another highly contaminated and highly illegal area. So that is why we come here, to light fires and cook things and chat and share history of my neighborhood. Thanks for watching.